Hi, I'm Rachel. I thought I'd pop on here and do a very quick film around yoga props. Yoga props such as blocks and belts and bolsters, but for today, because I do have my fluffy assistant who's walking around, I'm not sure I'll be able to get through all of them, so I'll focus on blocks only today. So first of all, I think the first thing to say about blocks and bricks is that I think some people feel that if they use a prop, a block or a brick, that they're not actually doing yoga properly or they're cheating in some way. And it's like, well, whatever proper yoga is, I'm not entirely sure. But there are some poses where yoga blocks are really, really useful. They really help you get the best out of a position, out of certain poses. Ardha Chandrasana is one that I can think off the top of my head, which I always use a yoga brick for. So anyway, because I haven't got much time, I think I'll stop waffling and get on. So first off, when we sit in a seated position, say for example Sukhanasana, easy pose, the idea is that our pelvis should be above the knees. And the reason for this is that it's much easier to lengthen through the spine, to create that space that we're looking for through our yoga postures. So for me, I find that sitting on a yoga block like this is so much more comfortable than sitting on the ground. And I'll demonstrate. So pop your block down, park your bum cheeks towards the edge of your block, and that allows the pelvis to tilt and lengthen, and the length through the spine. So I just find this so much more comfortable, and I highly recommend if you've got a block like this, having a little play around to see what works for you. It may be that it doesn't really make much difference, but it's worth exploring anyway. If you haven't got a block like this, just use a firm cushion or a folded blanket, something that's going to give you a little bit of support. So there's also, we can use it for balasana, child's pose. So if we come into our child's pose, whichever one that is, knees apart or knees together, whichever is your favourite. And it may be that for some of us, our forehead doesn't touch the earth. And that can't be very comfortable, especially if you're holding the pose for any length of time, if you're using it at the start of a practice to ground and for your breath awareness. You want to be as comfortable and as supported as possible. So either a block like this or a yoga brick, also a block. You can bring yourself forward into your balasana, and if your forehead doesn't quite touch the ground, you bring that down to there, or if it's just a little bit away from the ground, you can bring your forehead down to there, or perhaps a brick would be more comfortable. And this allows you to really surrender into the pose and to be supported ultimately. So there's two ways of using blocks fairly easily. Then if we move into something such as a low lunge, if you're lucky enough to have two bricks or just two books or anything that's fairly similar, so we'll come into our low lunge, and perhaps touching the floor it's just a little bit out of reach for you. You need the ground to rise up to make the pose a lot more comfortable, a lot more accessible. So what you can do is you can take your two blocks, place it either side, lengthen through the spine, and you're getting the full benefit of the pose then without having to sort of try and force and bend into shape that just doesn't feel particularly comfortable. These bricks are also really good for our half split. So as we pivot back, pointing the toes up to the sky, come into your comfortable position. Now what we might find is without the blocks, where actually the effort is going into finding the ground, which is then in turn curving the spine. Perhaps this is happening, and what you're not getting is the full benefit along the hamstring. So if you lift yourself up, bring the ground closer to you. When we're here, we can then tilt the pelvis, lengthen through the spine, lifting up through the crown of the head. So we've got that really lovely lengthened spine, tilted tailbone, toes are pointing up to the sky, and then you can really feel it. You can really feel it down this hamstring, and that's what we're looking for. Really, it's about making the most out of your yoga practice and getting the most from the poses that you incorporate into that. So from there, we can use blocks that way. If we come to some standing postures, so perhaps you have got extended side angle, so coming to Virabhadrasana 2, and your extended side angle, perhaps you're not doing this variation of it, perhaps you're aiming to come down to the ground, but again the ground, it's not accessible for you for whatever reason. Maybe just you've got an injury or something that's preventing you from getting down to the ground. Not that the aim isn't about getting down to the ground, I might add. But what you might like to do is bring the ground further up, so you can place your hand on the block. And ideally, and I always try and emphasise in my classes that the importance is finding that twist, shining the chest up to the sky and finding the length that way. Lovely. And same with Trikonasana, triangle pose. So as we lean forward, it may be that wherever you like to put your hand, it may be that just using a block makes that pose more comfortable. And again, spinning that chest up to the sky, finding that length. That's what we're looking for. And then of course, Ardha Chandrasana, half moon pose. I find this really difficult to do without a block, actually. I'm finding it quite tricky with the block, to be honest. So there we go. And again, I think the real emphasis here is it's not about getting your hand down to the ground, it's about getting the most out of the pose and making sure that your alignment is right for you and how that pose feels. So that's what I wanted to talk through today. So thank you very much, and I'll see you soon.